Welcome. What is the ego? In my perspective, there's nothing bad with the ego. We just need to build a communion with the ego. We need to build a communion between the triangle of the ego, the body, and the soul. We can identify to each party with a name. My ego is my human name. My soul, we found its name in the previous video. And the body, you can also find a name for it. And slowly, we start building dual conversation between those parts. In the third density where we live, it's the ego that has the will to take decision. It's the ego that is in charge of the remote of the video game. The soul has took some decision before coming here, but it's the ego that needs to decide which path, which roadmap, which timeline it wants to take. Sometimes it is very hard to know which one to take because the ego is kind of like blinded by its own inflated self. It thinks that he is the best, he knows best, he thinks that somehow he doesn't need help, right? So through this type of mindset, when only the ego is running our life, we are kind of losing time. We're not on our highest timeline. We're trying different timelines all the time, finding our ways until we build a communion between those three parties. And until we give our channel away to the higher self, that's the next level. And somehow the soul is trying to scream to the ego in the back of their head, hey, take this path, it's gonna be easier. Hey, take this path. But the ego doesn't want to listen. Like, no. I know. But the ego, somehow, always falls. And it's part of the lessons, right? It's part of the journey. As slowly we understand that there is more than this reality. There is more than this physical body. There is more than the ego. The ego is multiple things, but it is mainly the solar plexus that is linked to the third density, our sense of identity, our personality, our strength, our self-esteem. Once we have a very heavy ego, our solar plexus is hyperactive. We are narcissists, egocentric. We are taking attention, energy from others. We want to be seen, we want to be the best. We think that we are God. We think that we are the ultimate leaders that's going to change everyone, that's going to change the world. We are controlling. We are also maybe manipulating towards having what we want. When the solar plexus is underactive, closed, we don't believe in ourselves. We don't believe in our traits of personality that could help others, that could shine our light differently. We don't believe in our uniqueness. We don't really know ourselves deeply. We didn't understand the depth of our personality, the depth of our natal chart, the depth of maybe our astrologic sign, the depth of our skills, everything that makes us human, that allow us to shine with our own uniqueness. And the ego is also linked to the ego mind, which is part of the brain. It's not only the brain. The ego mind is the thinking patterns. It's the programs that we are running over and over and over again. In the first 7 years of our life, we build all those programs to survive, to live, to function. And those programs, we are living them 95% of the time. Those programs are good, but there's some programs that are not serving us, that we need to clear, that we need to bring awareness into. So the ego has light and darkness. We need to start cleaning the darkness of the ego. That is a combination of the pain body, this energy field around us of trap emotion, this cloudy energy field that we need to clear to start seeing clearly from the heart center, from the space of the soul. And this running mind, the hamster wheel, that keep running and running and running, projecting about the future, ideas, how to change the world, how to do this, how to control that. It's just non-stop thought patterns. lower than I am on the map of consciousness, more thoughts that I have. And as I reach higher level of consciousness, expand my energy field, there's more space for the soul to be present, I build more communion with the soul, there's less thoughts per day. We bring more and more a communion between those three parties. I like to represent the ego as an angry teenager. The teenager that knows everything. He thinks that his parent doesn't know anything, right? He thinks that he knows best. He thinks that he knows the whole world. Is acting some kind of like arrogant. But behind, there's some very, very subtle anger. Anger about the reality, the society. Anger towards the parents. The soul is like a wise grandparent that is just watching, observing, sitting, being happy to still be here, watching the kids running, watching the teenager making mistakes. The grandparent knows that it's not going to work if it goes and give advice here and there, because everyone is on their own journey. So he enjoys just watching the smaller versions, the younger version, making their own mistakes. And the body is like an innocent child that just wants to play. It is pure, it is ready at any time to be used to explore this physical reality, to go play in the kid's park, to enjoy the boundaries of this physical world, to express the energy, to connect with the soul and the ego. The ego wants to be seen, and it has two different techniques to be seen. The first one is to become famous. Like most of this society right now, everyone wants to become an influencer, everyone wants to be seen, everyone wants to be known. Most of the reality, the collective consciousness, live at pride consciousness. Actually, the collective consciousness is at 195, the end of pride consciousness. And the other technique is to act as a victim, to have some kind of a disease, to feel depressed, to feel those heavy, heavy emotions, to kind of like subconsciously scream for attention, scream for help, scream for someone to take care of us. The ego wants everything happening right now. The ego wants more. The ego is always looking for a way to win. The ego is afraid of dying, and the soul is patient because the soul knows that it has thousands of lives to do, to experience all the possibilities of God. It doesn't matter if the physical reality ego becomes somebody in this life. Maybe it's part of the lessons, but maybe also it can become somebody in another life. So there is no stress. The soul is slow, compassionate. It is all the traits of the heart center. A great way to start analyzing our ego is to journal about all the identities that we associate with. I am a man. I am this nationality. I am my career. I am my projects. When we identify, like for example, like me now, I'm building this course, right? I could easily say, okay, this is my course. I don't want this type of people to watch it. I don't want this course to be seen there or there or there. It's a sense of identifying to my ego. It's like a projection of my ego. But from the soul perspective, it is just a course that I'm transmitting into the universe, and once it's gone, it's out there, it is flying, floating by itself. Whatever happened will happen. I'm not linked to it. I'm not linked to an outcome. I'm not linked to who and what and how it's going to be seen. So those are all kind of like ego identification that we need to start analyzing, journaling. And as we reach higher level of consciousness, more and more that we separate ourselves from all those attachment, emotional attachment of this third density physical reality. The ultimate ego identity, ego layer that we need to assess is the spiritual ego. The sense of feeling some kind of like pride because of our soul journey, because of where our soul is coming from, because of all the spiritual experiences we had. Promoting our self, physical self, human self, from this soul journey. Boosting our sense of uniqueness towards those spiritual experiences. Sadly, a lot of people are lost in the spiritual ego. And it's not because someone is spiritual, doing a lot of spiritual experiences, doing a lot of healing, that someone is not living at pride consciousness. I see this a lot. It is very, very common. Meaning that they are doing everything from the ego. It is the new trend right now to boost our pride, to be a spiritual awakening person. So let's be very, very careful of those patterns. The way to higher consciousness is to bring discernment between the ego and the soul. It is almost impossible to bring discernment between the ego and the soul when we live below 250, when the first layer of the heart is not open. At neutrality, it's really at that point that we start understanding this discernment, because it's at this level that for the first time we are starting the communion between the ego and the soul. At willingness, we are more grounded in the heart. The heart is very, very stable. We are having a lot of intuition passing through the heart in tiny vibrations. Openness, if it's true or yes. Contraction, if it's false or no. To build discernment, the only way is practice. Each time I take a decision, I assess the heart center. Close my eyes and I try to feel. How does this decision makes me feel in the heart? Is it opening or closing? If I'm taking decision out of impulse, like as fast as possible, maybe it's a way to avoid feeling it. So I need to be very careful of that. With time, with practice, you're going to know the difference when it's an ego decision or when it's a heart-based soul decision that is linked to your highest timeline. No matter what, we should always take action. Even if we're not sure if it's coming from the ego or the heart, by just the fact I'm taking action, I am moving forward, I'm going to receive some lessons out of it. I'm going to fail, which is going to allow me to reflect and it's going to bring me experience. But if we stay stagnant, that's when we lose. So play with it. Don't be afraid to take an ego decision. Even if we're taking an ego decision, it is still part of the journey. It's still part of understanding the soul. We need to go through those lessons. We need to go through those ego decisions. It is part of building the skill of discernment. Another way to bring discernment is to use a pendulum or muscle testing, which is the same than asking the heart, right? When I ask the heart, I feel the expansion, contraction. It's a way of muscle testing the heart center, but I can also do it physically through the muscle testing that we're going to see in bigger depth in other chapters. But even when I do muscle testing, there can be some type of ego answers. So how do I know? It's really about the feeling in the heart. It's really about practice. Practicing those feelings in the heart, practicing being in the heart, practicing bringing attention in the heart all the time. It can take months, even years, to be fully grounded in the heart. So we need patience. My advice to conclude this lesson is to start journaling about your identity. To start journaling, when are you acting out of the ego? What are the traits? How do you behave when you act out of the ego? Journal about past decisions that you made out of the ego and compare them with past decisions that you made out of the heart. Explore through journaling and things are going to come up into the surface. As we journal, it is a way of channeling And then somehow, when we use the hand on paper, we are fully present and things are emerging. Breakthroughs are coming. So analyze those things, identities, comparison from heart and ego decision, and then traits of ego patterns. Have fun.